Hey guys, welcome to another regime special. Today in this video, I'll be using mapchart.net in order to place all of the different Christian denominations of the Middle East. Remember, these are indigenous Christians of the Middle East in the Arab world. If you want a more detailed look at them, you can find maps like this for Lebanon, but I don't know if you can find them for Jordan, Iraq, or Egypt. So go ahead and look, but I think this is why I made them for those regions. So welcome. Please sit back and enjoy as I talk about the different Christians of the Middle East, where they live, and part of their history as well. First group are the Maronites, who belong to Eastern Catholicism. They are in communion with the Roman Catholic Church. Their liturgical languages are West Syriac and Arabic. As you can see in this map, the vast majority of them live in Lebanon. So they live in the mountains of Lebanon, known as Jabal Lebanon, and they also come from areas in Syria in the north, as you can see. That's where the movement of Maronitism actually began. And many of their disciples who came from this area went and converted the indigenous pagans of Mount Lebanon, and that's who the Maronites are today in Lebanon. We also see a few in the Holy Land. Some are indigenous Maronite Palestinians, other are Lebanese who had migrated there in the past 50 or so years, maybe following the Lebanese Civil War. The Maronites are by far the most unique of the Christians in the Middle East because they're the only ones who have the kind of political power that they really aspire to have. In fact, it was because of Maronite insistence that the state of Lebanon was even created. Maronites have the presidency, they have a majority of the lead in the army, and they have a very long history and a lot of clashes in the region as well. As for their spirituality, they're a mix of Easternism as well as some recent Latinization, but it's a very, very beautiful denomination for sure. Second group here we have are called the Greek Orthodox, also known as Antiochian or Roum in Arabic, and their liturgical language is Arabic as well as Greek in Greece and Cyprus. As you can see, it looks like they're much more spread out than the Maronites. You see some are all across the Levant, in parts of Lebanon, not nearly as numerous as the Maronites, but they do exist in Lebanon as a sizable minority. They're in southern Syria, northern Syria, central Syria, the coast of Syria. They're all over the place, and they're the majority of Arab Christians, Arabic-speaking Christians who identify as Arabs. The Orthodox, as well as the Melkites, and even some Maronites, were some of the first Arab nationalists. And so it is not rare to see that Arab national idea or that Arab unity idea being present in some Orthodox today, but especially in the past. They have a lot of noted figures that they revere, such as St. John of Damascus, who was one of the early Eastern Christian writers that spoke about the new religion, Islam, that came to that region. So you can find these Arab Christians everywhere. They have many beautiful churches in Jordan and Syria, and a very, very long and fascinating history. Next, we have the Melkite, or Greek Catholics. These once belonged with the Greek Orthodox, but they ended up splitting off, becoming in communion with Rome, and becoming Eastern Catholics, much like the Maronites. So you can see that their range, if you can say that, is pretty similar to the Greek Orthodox. Remember, when I say Greek Orthodox or Greek Catholics, none of these people are ethnically Greek, and they don't speak Greek. It's just kind of a title. So you can also call them Antiochian Orthodox and just Melkite, maybe more appropriate. You see a lot of Melkites in the Holy Land by Jerusalem, parts of northern and northeastern Lebanon, and a lot in northern Syria. In fact, my grandmother is a Melkite from the Aleppo region of northern Syria. At least the majority of her family is from northern Syria. So they have a wide and beautiful history. A long and beautiful history. And their liturgy is the same one that we see the Orthodox use. So very, very almost identical liturgy. Here we have a Melkite church in Aleppo in northern Syria, again resembling your average Greek, quote, Orthodox church. And here we have East meets West, Eastern Melkite Catholic Patriarch and the Western Pope. Speaking of the West, let's talk about the Latin Catholics, what we call Roman Catholics. Now, that might be confusing to an Arabic speaker who refers to the Greek Orthodox and the Melkites as Roum, meaning Roman, but in reality, these are the true Roman Catholics. So there's not too many of them in the Middle East. They have a small presence in Lebanon, in Syria, mainly in urban areas, as well as in the Holy Land by Jerusalem. Now, Roman Catholics, most of them are just indigenous Christians, so you see a lot of Arab Christians are Roman Catholic. You see a lot of them actually are in Jordan, so I don't know if it's the majority, but maybe a plurality of Christians living in Jordan, of Arab ethnicity, will be Roman Catholics. So you see a lot in the Holy Land. People will say, well, this is because of the Crusaders. I disagree. I don't think the Crusaders really had a great impact on religious demographics. So you can just see that there are some Roman Catholics in the Middle East. They're by no means a majority in any region. And here we have a beautiful Roman Catholic church, which is in the Holy Land, in Jerusalem itself. Next group we have are the Coptic Orthodox. These are not part of Eastern Orthodoxy, meaning in union with the Greeks and Russians. They're Oriental Orthodox. The Copts are one of the oldest Christian sects in the entire world. They're the vastly largest group of Christians in the Middle East by far. Upwards of 12 to 15 million of them live in Egypt alone. You see some are spread in the Sinai, you have some in the Holy Land, and quite a lot in the Delta, but the majority come from slightly more south in Egypt, Almenia province, on the Nile Delta itself, and then, of course, in the east. I may have over-exaggerated the east, where they live in that desert region, but I did want to emphasize just how massive their population is compared to other Christians of the Middle East. Their liturgy is absolutely beautiful. Their language liturgically is Coptic, and they refer to themselves as Copts, usually not as Arabs, but the vast majority of them are fluent in Arabic and are not really fluent in Coptic anymore. Here we have a beautiful Coptic church with a beautiful Coptic liturgy. And up next we have the Coptic Pope, who is the spiritual leader of all the Coptic Christians in all of the continent of Africa. Next we have the Syriac Orthodox, who are in union with the Ethiopians, the Copts, and the Armenians. It's because they're Oriental Orthodox. They're not in union with the Russians or the Greeks. The Syriac Orthodox, their name, Syriac, may not surprise you, but the vast majority of them are probably in Syria. We see them in northern Syria as well as eastern and northeastern Syria. Also kind of overlaps with northwestern Iraq. So here we have a lot of Syriac Orthodox of varying ethnicities. So you'll see Syriac Orthodox that claim one ethnicity, some that claim another. There are probably some people who identify as Arabs but are Syriac Orthodox, and others who say they are Assyrians and are Syriac Orthodox. So they're not the majority in any region. They're not like the Maronites, but they are a very sizable population of Christians, and I think they're always ignored because people usually say focus on the Maronites or the Greek Antiochian Orthodox who inhabit the Levant. Here we have the eternal Anglo fearing the ancient Syriac, and maybe he'll convert, inshallah. Up next, we have the Armenian Orthodox and Armenian Catholic. Now, I put them together because the Armenian Catholics are a minority within a minority. The Catholics are part of Eastern Catholicism, and the Armenian Orthodox are Oriental Orthodox, like the Syriacs we just saw and the Egyptian Copts we saw before. So not in union with the Russians or the Greeks at all. Armenians inhabit a lot of Arab areas following the horrible events at the end of World War I, which occurred to them, and you can see them in Jordan, in the Holy Land. You can see quite a lot of them in Lebanon. They are actually about 5% of Lebanon, so comparable to the Druze, and they do have political power in Lebanon. So they're not just there existing like eternal refugees, they're part of the society. They're a recognized ethnicity and an ethno-religious group within Lebanon. And there are a lot in northern Syria as well. And actually, you can see there's a little bit in Kuwait because there are some who become citizens of Kuwait. Very small minority. Here we have some Lebanese Armenians who are protesting. They have quite a large population. And here we have, again, you can see Armenian Orthodox, 5 seats, Armenian Catholic, 1 seat. So they have 6 seats overall, is how many seats Armenians have. Next, we have the Church of the East, referred to as the Nestorian Church. Not in communion with the Oriental Orthodox, with the Eastern Catholics, the normal Catholics, the Eastern Orthodox, no one. These guys actually precede the idea of Catholicism or Orthodoxy. They mainly inhabit Iraq, not in massive numbers. There are probably some in Syria, small numbers, a few in Iran, and actually, believe it or not, there were some cases of Nestorian, again, Church of the East, who were living in areas of Central Asia. They were once the majority throughout the eastern half of the Middle East, so Iraq and onwards, into Iran, all across Central Asia, parts of India, parts of China, were part of the ancient Church of the East. I use Nestorian, but some may think, okay, that's an insult. I'm not trying to be insulting with it. A lot of people colloquially call them the Nestorian Church. In this, we can see right now on this map, look at how they're such a massive part of Christianity. Now, of course, they're not. Here is some Church of the East artwork, some ancient artwork that I think is just absolutely fascinating. Persian, Chinese, Indian artwork. Here's another map showing kind of where their dioceses were and where their languages were being spoken. Absolutely fascinating. I will do a video just on them in the future. Next, we have the Chaldeans. These people, called the Chaldeans, are Eastern Catholic. Their liturgical language, I believe, is Eastern Syriac, though it may be referred to as Eastern Neo-Aramaic. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. They exist throughout much of northern Iraq. They have some presence in Syria, small presence in Lebanon, a little bit in the Holy Land, but mainly in northern Iraq. A lot of people associate them with the Assyrians. I'm not going to get into that ethnicity debate because I actually don't know all the details of that, but I think the majority of Chaldeans just refer to themselves as Chaldean. They're native Christians of Iraq in communion with Rome, but of course, they're Eastern Catholics, so they have their own liturgical practices, much like the Maronites, the Melkites, and the Armenian Catholics. I think the Chaldeans are honestly one of my favorite denominations to look at. A very, very interesting ethno-religious group with a long, fascinating, and unique history. I mean, look at this absolutely beautiful church that we can see. I believe this one is in northern Iraq. I absolutely love that architecture. And here is one in Iran as well. So I will be doing a video on the Chaldeans themselves in the future as well. Next, we have tribal Arab Christians. So these are Christians of very different denominations, and this is mainly just an ethnic group. So these are where Christians who are tribal Arabs come from. When I say tribal Arab, I don't just mean your average urbanized, Arabic-speaking Greek Orthodox or Sunni Muslim who lives in like Beirut or something. I mean a tribal Arab who comes from an Arab tribe, can trace their lineage, who practices ancient Arab customs, who associates more heavily with an Arab or Arabian identity. There are not a lot of them, but I did want to place a bunch of different colors throughout the map so you can see where their range is. There are some in Sinai. I think the majority, or at least the larger group you'll find, will be in eastern Syria as well as in Jordan. There is a small number of them in southern Iraq. People don't really know that. Again, very tiny number, but there are Arab Christians who live in Iraq. Not every Christian from Iraq is a Chaldean or an Assyrian. So here we have an example of a tribal Arab Christian. He is attending the liturgy. He's a group of tribal Arab Christians as well. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I will be doing separate videos on each ethnicity.